No wetness. It's completely matte finished. I love this. I'm going to have to tell her about that, hold on. Forgot to send the invite. One sec. You mean for trial or my lip balm? Because we got new lip balm today. Hi, Lori. Yeah, this is a no transfer one, yeah. Jessica thinks they're going to pull a 405 today. What about you guys? No. Oh, this time there was. Okay, not that time. I really do like this. Lori has the possibility of losing her right to defend herself.
Continue with your cross-examination of this witness.
In short, did you? I ordered 2 other colors, and I'm glad this one came first. It tastes like cherries. I love this.
Yesterday we were speaking of your interview with Brandon in the car. About 25 minutes.
Let me look up the whole 405 because I want to explain it right, not just one example. That would be what? I know. So the Federal Rule of Evidence 405 addresses the method of proving character in court proceedings. It allows evidence of a person's character or no, wait, hold on, I was wrong. I was thinking about that. This one is opening the door. Thank you for mentioning that, and whoever had asked what it was, because I always try to look up because you guys know my fibrofog is intense. So thank you for that. Yes, she did open that door yesterday. After she tried bulldozing it the day before, it was hanging just by the hinges, just a little bit. She just told that thing right the hell open. So they could prove that she's a cold-blooded murderer. I'm not supposed to say that word. I'm sorry. We love the TikTok shop. TikTok shop is great. So yeah, on cross-examination of a character witness, the court may allow inquiry into relevant specific instances of personal conduct. I mean, but keep in mind one thing, you guys. That's what Lori wants. We're just going to stay here. That's what Lori wants. She wants that door opened. Her last trial, she was complaining because they didn't allow all of the stuff in, saying that she would have won if they would have admitted everything and not kept that out. So I'm wondering if this time she's doing it on purpose. I don't think she's expecting the threat where he gave her that she will lose being able to represent herself if her continuance for those actions. But yeah, totally possibility with her. I think the only consequence that she would be upset about, though, is the representing herself. I think she fully intends for that door to be opened.
30 minutes, is that correct?
That sounds right.
And that you audio recorded it, is that correct?
Use the mic, Lori.
And at the end of that interview, you admonished Brandon to not contact Melanie, is that correct?
There were phone calls attempted to be made to Melanie.
I like this a lot.
We tried to contact her to get her side of the story early on with.
So who tried to contact her and when was that? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It was during the interview in the car before I can return back to the crime scene. Brandon and I discussed what we had and I gathered that information. We knew that
see if I have his name.
was with his soon-to-be ex-wife, and we knew where the other 3 children were. We, at this point, did not know the full circumstances.
That's one of the
surrounding shooting.
investigators from the
So it was
case.
important to reach
No,
out
we
to her,
just
let
pressed play.
let Melanie know, hey, there was a shooting that just occurred, and
He's pretty cool.
So who ended up calling her? You called her or Brandon called her?
Brandon called her from his phone 3 separate times.
And she didn't answer?
No,
But you didn't attempt to call her directly?
not during that time, no.
Okay. And so as far as you know, Brandon followed that
Thank
admonition
you.
to not contact her again that day?
Yes, as we also had his phone, so
Those things are so cute.
that made it so we couldn't.
Okay. And
That
so,
wasn't the purpose, but we had his phone.
Thank you.
so did you end up making contact with Melanie?
I made contact telephonically with Melanie Boudreau at the time, now Pulaski, and yes, I was able to make contact with her.
Was that still on October 2nd or was that the next day?
I left
Where
a message for
is she?
her. I don't remember when I spoke with her specifically, but she agreed to meet with me on October 3rd, which was the following day after the shooting.
And that was at the Gilbert Police Department?
Gilbert Police Department in a private interview room, yes.
Okay. And so Melanie came and met you that day on October 3rd, is that correct?
Yes,
And you interviewed her?
yes,
On YouTube.
She came in voluntarily
yes,
and talked to you?
yes.
And did she ask for an attorney?
No,
This smells so good.
And about how long was that interview, do you think?
approximately 1 hour.
You're welcome.
It was a little interrupted because their youngest was with them in the room. She didn't have childcare at the time. But I believe the interview lasted for about an hour.
Okay. And did she advise you in that interview of some business deals that Brandon was involved in?
The objection's sustained, it's hearsay.
Lori, there is no selective hearing allowed in the courtroom. You cannot keep talking when the prosecutor objects to what you just said. You cannot do that, ma'am.
Did you investigate anything that you learned during that interview?
Yes,
Did you investigate anything that Melanie offered to you during that interview?
can you be more specific about what was
Please.
covered?
Commentary. She's not very close to the mic.
Maybe have him review something that you wanted to consider. If you have a written copy.
Okay.
I've got the volume at 100, so it's them.
Maybe a better question is, did you follow up with anything that you learned during that interview with Melanie?
2 more what?
Yes,
And did you talk to her again after that 1 hour long interview?
I did speak with her again, yes.
On the phone or in person?
The next time I had any communication with
I wonder how it
Melanie
looks with
was,
this.
on October 14th, so 2 days after our in-person interview.
Okay, and did she contact you?
She did contact me.
Mm,
And she was coming to you for help?
got you.
She was reaching out regarding some custodial issues.
She thought you might be able to help her, is that correct?
She was seeking some advice.
Too
Yes.
bright.
So Brandon had testified that he provided you with a VIN number to a Jeep Wrangler in my household on October 2nd, 2019, is that correct?
That is correct that he testified to that, yes.
And did he do that? Did he provide you with that VIN number?
I
Today.
do not remember that. I do not recall being provided a VIN number. There was a lot that happened early in the investigation. I can jail.
This was the officer slash detective that 60 of you found hot yesterday. Thank you.
I'll tell you that we got the license plate for the Texas Jeep early on in our investigation, which when running a license plate, we also received the VIN number, but I do not remember specifically getting the VIN number from Mr. Boudreau.
So where did you get the license plate number from?
From the Chandler photographs from their incident in
So after, like yesterday, you contacted Chandler and that's where you got those from?
the images with the license plate, yes.
Yes, very little.
What day was that you contacted Chandler in October?
When I contacted them, I can't testify to that, but I do know that I physically met with them on October 9th of 2019.
So your testimony here today is that you did not discover that the
Wait.
Jeep was gray in my household because of the VIN number that Brandon provided to you. Would that be fair?
Okay.
Yes, that would be fair.
But you did discover it on October 9th that there was a gray Jeep in my household. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Would it also be fair to say that no one that you interviewed or talked to mentioned anything about the Jeep being gray?
The color of it being gray, no.
Okay.
Not early in the investigation.
Did you search for a green Jeep with Texas plates on it?
No. No, there was never a green Jeep specifically searched for with a Texas license plate. That would be some.
We got a flash goal. It's 25 heart me's. So one from 25 different people is the one.
Then we would farm out to our investigators, our civilian investigators, and to specifically ask for a green Jeep Wrangler with a Texas license plate. I don't know what that would yield as far as results, and we didn't have enough to go after just that at that moment.
Okay. And you didn't farm that out?
Okay, mine went through.
At that juncture, no.
And did you search for a dark blue Jeep with Texas plates on it with a tire on the back?
Same
Thank
answer,
you.
or similar answer to what I just provided.
Detective Pillar, how often or how many times would you say that you have communicated with Brandon Boudreaux in the past 5.5 years?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to ask and answered as well as potential 404B issues.
404B.
I think she asked Mr. Boudreaux those questions. I'll allow it, but be aware of the issues, please, that you're hoping it could be open. Go ahead.
Multiple times. I have spoken with Mr. Boudreaux
Thank you.
multiple times.
We need
And
15
would you
more.
say multiple emails back and forth?
The majority of communication was either telephonic or text message. However, I do know there were emails exchanged as well.
I'm going to hand you what is proposed Exhibit 192. from the
Thank you.
twins.
Thank you. 12 more.
Detective Pillar, do you
think-
recognize this email?
Appears to be an email that would be exchanged
Now
from Mr.
11.
Boudreaux to myself within my police department email.
Thank you for the follow.
And that's something to and from him to you and to you from him?
In this example you provided, yes, I don't know how long the message thread was for this.
Okay. And you recognize that as a true and correct copy of that email exchange?
Yes, from February 12th of 2020.
The defense would move to publish the email?
They would object. We're going to go into that.
We already discussed this exhibit.
Can we not? What is up with your guys' volume? You really need to do something about that.
In that email, Detective, did you request that Brandon provide you with financial information regarding his ex-wife, Melanie Boudreaux?
Your Honor, I'm going to ask to sidebar again regarding defenses.
Okay, so far, actually, we need to do our tally for the last live. Hold on. Sorry, I forgot to add it up. Okay, I left off I stopped counting at 14 because I got really angry. So the Commonwealth objected 14 times, and all 14 of those were sustained. The defense objected twice. For Karen Reed, that is. And then for Lori, yesterday, there were 30 objections and 30 sustained. But there were 17 allowed. So we're keeping track again. So far, prosecutors got 3 and the judge sided with her on 3. Did you? I went out and I ate 2 pieces of candy, looked for my cat, got the lip gloss out of the mailbox, and then I strolled back over here. If you guys haven't sent your heart me's yet, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. We have the heart me is our flash challenge. If we get this one, this is our 29th. That means the one for tomorrow will be our 30. We'll finally be in the 30s. 7 more heart me's. Who will be the final 7? Will it be you? You? There you go. Thank you. I'm feeling goofy, sorry. I got extra energy from that candy.
Detective Filler, did you request that financial information regarding Melanie from Brandon?
Yes,
And did he provide you with that information?
yes,
And did he provide you with financial documents you requested in another email?
Who will be the final 4?
I know we've discussed financial documents, and everything I was sent, I believe, was via email, but I don't know what specific one you may be referring to, but I think it's safe to say yes, that there were emails exchanged about Melanie Boudreau Pulowski's financial documents being sent to me.
So her financial gain if something were to happen to Brandon, is that correct?
That is correct.
So he also provided you with screenshots of information regarding Melanie that didn't have to do with finances. Is that also correct?
Your Honor, I'm gonna object again and on 404, okay, and 405.
Did you read those documents when they were sent to you?
I reviewed the documents that were sent to me, yes.
And did you include those in part of your investigation?
Does anybody feel like we're having one of those Groundhog Day moments? Oh, Lori Daybell, also known as Lori Vallow, also known as Doomsday Cult Mom. This is her 3rd trial. Her first one is already over and she's already been found guilty. She's been found guilty of unaliving her 2 children and conspiring to unalive her current husband's wife. And then the trial that she just had about a month and a half to 2 months ago, that was her just being found guilty for unaliving her 4th husband, or conspiring to unalive her 4th husband. Her brother did her dirty work. This one is for her niece's former husband. And they were trying to get the kids from him too. I have no doubt in my mind that if not some, if not all of those children would have ended up the same way that Tylee and JJ did. What's wrong? I'll get you on here one of these days. I know you do a lot.
Investigation.
They are included in an investigation, yes.
I love these.
On those screenshots, does Melanie give a theory of what she thinks happened on October 2nd, 2019 that you reviewed?
Not that I remember from that exchange. I'd have to see it.
Your Honor, I'm gonna object to hearsay and relevance.
I'm not asking for the truth of the matter. I just want to know what he
I
knows.
didn't ask for it. You can show him the document that we raised your question.
These are Medicube PDRN toning gel pads. You cut them in half so you could use them on your cheeks. For the 2nd time, by choice, I know. If you guys haven't sent your heart me's, we still need a few more heart me's, 4 more heart me's. Who will be our final 4? Now, if you use these, when you get them, cut them in half. You don't need big old circles on your face. Only leave them on for a few minutes.
Is there something specific you would like?
Go ahead and rephrase your question.
Is this one of the screenshots that Brandon sent to you? That you reviewed?
It doesn't
This
have
is a
any
new
email,
product of theirs.
headings or footers on it. This is what appears to be a Word document, like from Microsoft Word. I can't testify that this is exactly what he sent me, if this is a attachment to the email, from what I'm looking at here.
Okay. Do you recognize it as something that you read
Collagen toning
before?
pad.
The information.
It helps with the lines. I think these, I'll show you.
I'm not reading the whole thing. I'm simply reviewing what I can to see if
Take
it's
your time.
judgment.
Why am I wondering if the scar tape? Yeah, I have that. It's too hard to keep it on though. Even these, Binks comes up when I'm sleeping and tries to eat these off my forehead. We only have 5 more minutes, guys, to meet our flash goal. We need 3 more heart me's. Who will be the final 3? Thank you, sugar. No idea why I'm being a goofball. These plump your skin up really well. She always does. That's 100%. Who will be the heart me 3?
I must say that I don't remember this. There was a lot of correspondence shared and a lot of images. But looking at this seems familiar with some of the allegations that I've heard throughout the investigation. However, I don't remember this specific document being sent to me.
So when you requested Brandon Boudreau on this date to send you these documents, that is part
Thank you,
of
Susan.
the 7 screenshots that he sent to you.
Okay.
So my question is, during that time, you were still gathering information, right?
Yes.
You were still
2
looking at all
more.
possibilities of what really happened on that day, right?
And I'm gonna object to what time period, February, is there a
Yeah,
date
can
on
you
there?
clarify the time period?
Foundation.
Is it the, February,
12th.
February
Yes.
12th? So, rephrase the question with that.
So my question is, did you?
The Arizona courtroom, they tend to have like the first few days, the sound like sucks, but usually it gets fixed by the next one. The final 2, who will give the final 2 heart me's? Who will it be? Who will it be? We only need 2 more in 2 minutes. Please hurry.
You ever read the information in that screenshot that you have there before?
I wish I could
It's
heart me
possible.
myself.
It was sent to me in an email. I likely read it, yes. But there was at the point of February 12th of 2020. There were other investigations I was working on as well.
So did you disregard the information in that during your investigation?
I'm gonna object, and I think we may need to cipher again.
Yeah, let's say we're.
I already did send the one from my backup. We have exactly 2 minutes and 4 seconds to get 2 more heart me's. Otherwise, we don't hit our goal of 29. So tomorrow won't be our goal to 30. 1 coin, guys. Yes. Thank you, guys. We did it. Team, we're at 29. That means tomorrow we go toe-to-toe for 30. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I'm going to take this one off in probably another minute. I leave this one on for the longest, but not more than a minute. I put it under my under eye once, which they say not to do, but I tried it because I'm the guinea pig. It made all the skin really, really bright, but very, very white too. It sure does. 100% it does. How long of a sidebar shall it be? We have patience like nobody. Thank you for the follow. Here we go. I kind of want tacos for dinner. Aaron made the best tacos. I think it was Sunday night. So good. I'm really tempted to go make myself a big taco bowl. Thanks, Lori.
Tesla for a second. What happened with the Tesla window? I know it fell out of the car and was sitting on the driveway, so where did it go from there?
The Tesla, the glass from the window that fell out of the Tesla itself was discarded.
Was what?
Thrown away. It was discarded.
Oh, it was thrown away.
Yes.
And when did that happen?
I don't recall. I believe after we were concluding our time at the scene, we had our photographs of it, was turned over to the resident, in that case, Mr. Boudreau, to dispose of.
Okay. And it wasn't preserved for any reason?
No.
Why not?
We collected what we needed from it at that moment, and the amount of glass that was there and the images that were taken seemed sufficient at the time, and so it was simply thrown.
Yes, thank
Was
you.
there a hole in that window at all? Like a bullet hole?
A bullet hole through the window outside of the images that have been presented that would indicate where
No
the
line.
impact point may have been, so kind of the curvature towards the top of the glass. Outside of that, no, there was no other damage that would match about a bullet hole.
Okay. And you didn't carefully put on 2 pairs of gloves and take it to the evidence room at the Gilbert Police Department, is that correct?
Take the glass.
Correct.
That's correct.
And what about the Tesla? So what happened to the Tesla that day?
They threw that away
We
too.
processed the Tesla at the scene. We transported it over to the Gilbert Police Department to further inspect indoors. Essentially, it was just one more act that we could take to better review what we already had investigated for the hours that we were outside.
And was it like towed? Do you tow it over?
No, it was, although unorthodox, it was transported by myself and followed by Detective McDermott to the property and evidence building where we had a technician standing by. Once arrival to the
I like them.
garage at that facility, we further looked into the bullet hole, and we weren't there very long. It was, again, another last review of the damage.
So you drove it over, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it was photographed?
Yes, we photographed the vehicle at the scene. Once at the police department, we have the surveillance cameras, but we can photograph it further once at the police department. We had no intention of impounding it at that time.
And it was measured?
No,
The bullet hole and things were measured? All that was done at the scene, but nothing was done at the Gilbert Police Department?
Yes,
And then it wasn't tested for the trajectory while at the Gilbert Police Department?
that's correct.
And it wasn't placed into evidence?
We did not impound the vehicle. The purpose for that was it was the victim's only vehicle at that time, similar to the smartphone that we took temporary custody of.
She's making me nervous. I'm not gonna lie. She's starting to make me a little nervous.
For convenience purposes, it was ultimately turned back over to the owner, in this case, Mr. Boudreau, both the vehicle and the smartphone.
Within a day?
Yes, approximately a day. It was a very brief period of time.
Okay. And having been a case agent hundreds of times, you must have known that if you were ever going to charge someone with this crime, then surely you would need this evidence so the defense could hire their own experts to do testing of the car and the window, right?
The crime of this caliber, and it's not uncommon for cases to develop into something more than what you initially believed, that's part of being human, part of being an investigator. We did not take the vehicle in this case. We did not have a decedent. In other words, we did not have a person who was injured or killed. We had property
Luckily.
damage, and we were still very early in our investigation to determine what happened. So, no, we did not maintain custody of that vehicle.
So is it not in your protocol to preserve evidence,
It's in our protocol to preserve evidence.
but not in this case?
In this case, I made the decision not to maintain custody of that Tesla.
You're
without
starting to
this
see?
evidence available, how would my experts be able to test for trajectory?
We couldn't test for trajectory with what we had. If it was here today, it's possible that you guys could test for trajectory with the advancements in technology. Again, not being somebody who is trained or certified in any type of trajectory training, I don't know how that process would even look, but
Thank
we
you.
simply don't have the vehicle today as we're discussing this.
And you don't have an expert at Gilbert Police Department that's an expert in trajectory?
At that time, we did not.
And how would my ballistics expert be able to test the hole in the Tesla to determine, in fact, if it was a rifle or a handgun that was used? How would I do that now?
How would you go about?
How would I have an expert do that now?
You would hire somebody who would potentially be a specialist in this area and see if they had the ability to obtain evidence of trajectory. But how would you do that now outside of hiring somebody and doing that without the vehicle? I suppose you could not.
I really wish they would turn it up.
Is it possible to perform our own tests from pictures?
Tests? No.
And did you request any tests be performed on the Tesla itself?
Outside of trying to obtain the surveillance footage and do our best that we could with what we had for the bullet hole itself, no additional tests were made.
And no testing was done with the windows either, is that correct?
You're referring to the glass? That was,
Yes, the glass.
no other tests were done with the glass.
And how about the 4 pieces of the projectile that were found? Were any of those tested?
Tested for,
For what kind of bullet they came from, or what kind of gun they came from?
again, not being
I think she's been watching some true crime.
a munitions expert, but seeing what bullet fragments look like and what projectiles can turn into upon impact, those fragments could not determine any type of rifling, which is the marks that are made within a barrel when a weapon is shot, because the bullet was not intact, and we had no casing. We had no gun to verify where it came from. We simply had some markings of some possible jacketing and the lead, which appeared consistent with a bullet that was fired in.
Yes, because she's her own lawyer by choice. I know, unfathomable. We would never do that. But Lori's her own creature.
And of course was fragmented. We were satisfied that we had a
I know.
individual get shot at by some firearm, be it rifle, handgun, but a firearm, eastbound to westbound, that collided and then ultimately ended up in Mr. Boudreau's
100%.
body frame. But to send it off for further testing, no, we did not send it off for further testing based on any reason that we knew we would not be able to get any viable weapon to compare it to, or any type of rifling where that would.
You hit that on the head, user. You hit the nail on the head with that one. I've said this before. She's been the center of attention her whole damn life. She's had the spotlight on her entire life. She goes into prison, that's gone. The last trial, she behaved because she didn't want that spotlight taken. However, now she has nothing to lose. Nothing at all. She doesn't have to worry about looking bad for future jurors. None of it. None of it. So now add that to the fact that her spotlight is being yanked off of her for the rest of her existence. That's why she's starting to lash out. That's why she's starting to unravel, in my opinion. And that is why she had that meltdown in court the other day. And right before that, she faked sick and said she couldn't walk. But, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I was always under the impression when you're talking about gods and goddesses, as she claims to be, you will be immune to sickness. But I guess not.
Match another firearm.
Well, would it make a big difference if it wasn't a rifle at all and what Mr. Boudreau saw was a rifle?
Can you rephrase that question?
So if you were to test it,
Because there's one victim left. He's still alive. He survived her. And he needs justice. Brandon needs justice. It was his own wife's aunt and uncle that did this to him. And she did know about it. It's sick, that
would
family.
someone just say, this came from a handgun, this did not come from a rifle, That would make a big difference in the story that Mr. Boudreau told to you, though, right?
You're welcome.
It would not.
No.
So he did not see a handgun, but if it came from a handgun, that would be contradictory, would it not?
I could see that.
To his statement of believing it was a rifle,
Correct.
his belief in mere observation for those split seconds of the weapon firing at him, I can't say for certain if it would have been from a handgun or a rifle. If we had an intact projectile or a shell casing,
Melanie's still under
what we
investigation.
have now are bullet fragments and a bullet hole and evidence to indicate that this happened. This shooting at Mr. Boudreau did in fact occur.
But you didn't test it.
The fragments were not tested.
And keep in mind too, sorry guys, but I have to keep in mind too that with the first trial with her children, she actually blamed her daughter Tylee, saying that she ended JJ and then herself, which is not true. And then she went and was throwing everything on on her brother, not Adam, the other one. My fiber fog is getting really thick today. Alex. She had no problem letting them know that it was him. So the fact that she's on trial now for Melanie's husband, she sang like a bird, you guys. She sang like a bird. She's already thrown Melanie under the bus. And she's been basically the mother figure in Melanie's life almost her whole life because her sister passed away at a very young age, and I don't know what from. But the only person that will be left for her to throw under the bus after all this was over will be the one person that she, for some reason, believes is her soulmate that she's been married to every time she's been reborn, and that they're fated to lead the 44,000 souls to God knows where, God knows when. They're the chosen ones. She has big life goals and afterlife goals. So she still thinks that despite all of this, that she's going to get out. That's what she said in her 2020 interview before her last trial. However, I don't think she believes that anymore. That's why she's been acting out, in my opinion. And it's only a moment of time before she opens that door. And hear me when I say this. She wants that door open. She is proud of what she did. She did it for something that she truly believes in, even ending her children. She believes that God sent her to do all this stuff. She is proud. So that spotlight's getting taken off of her for the first time in her life. This is like her last hurrah, or whatever you want to call it. That's what it is for her. That's why she's been getting thrown out of the courtroom. That's why she's been acting up this time. I think she's starting to unravel.
Now, Detective Pillar, how many neighbors confirmed that they heard a gunshot?
100%.
Hearing a loud bang or hearing a gunshot, approximately 4, 5?
4. Do you know who those were? Who those neighbors were?
Not off the top of my head, no. From my memory.
Was that in one of your reports?
I've seen her, but I don't remember.
In my report, I documented the detectives who made contact with neighbors that either heard something or had...
Here's the question, though. When she threw her under the bus, we were watching it happen. And I said, the first thing I said was, Canada, Mexico, lock down your borders because she's heading your way. She's already under investigation for the attempting unaliving of her former husband. So when Lori Daybell verified that as true, I said she's going to flee. I don't know that she's, any different. I mean, where is she? Melanie, where are you?
The electronic surveillance.
Yeah, with her new
cameras,
hubby,
although
yeah.
did not capture footage of the incident, captured consistent noise of a loud bang, as well as a vehicle idling for an extended period of time near their residence, which is near where the Jeep would have been parked prior to Mr. Boudreau arriving and then upon his arrival. But it just captured audio with once again, no footage of the actual shooting.
Twice.
Did you say multiple neighbors? Is that what your understanding was? That multiple neighbors heard a loud noise?
Yes.
So Brandon heard a loud noise. You have the ring that was a loud noise, right? Who else?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Could it be that there was no one else, just those two?
There were other neighbors that acknowledged hearing a noise. That was a loud noise. It was not a normal noise.
Were those across the street neighbors on the other side?
I would have to refer the detectives who interviewed individuals who said they heard something. And those detectives notated the addresses in which they heard a noise.
Now I really want
When I say
tacos.
multiple, clearly, I mean more than one person heard it.
So 2 is multiple in your book. Is that correct?
In this case, we have more than 2 that have testified, but there are others that may.
More than 2 people have testified here that they heard a loud noise?
Yes.
And who would those be?
We have the neighbor with the ring camera, and I forget her name, I apologize. And then we have Mr. Boudreau, who heard that.
Mhm.
And then we had, those are the 2 that we had so far with the loud noise of the inconsistent evidence.
You chose not to question
You
them.
would consider that multiple people. Is that correct?
But there are others within the report that acknowledge hearing the noise, yes.
Not in any report that I read. In a report that you read?
Object to testifying as to the argument.
That's the objection.
Oh, that sounds really good too.
In a sworn statement that you made, detective, you put the other neighbors confirmed they observed a gray colored hardtop 2-door Jeep. What neighbors do you know of that said that there was a gray Jeep?
Where was that testimony?
So, in your affidavit, on November 19th regarding the Jeep Wrangler,
Mhm.
would you like to take a look?
Sure.
Should I do tacos or a taco salad? It's already cooked. I just have to heat everything up. She literally thinks her "you can't handle the truth" and Legally Blonde moment. You can't wash out a perm. Like, that's her moment. She really thinks it's coming. Regular old beef. Thank you, Lori. Taco Tuesday. Every week. I almost said every day, but then I realized it would no longer be Tuesday.
And earlier you had testified that no one had said the Jeep was gray at all, but in your sworn testimony there, you say that other neighbors confirmed that they observed a gray colored hardtop 2-door Jeep.
Ground. And I got called fat in my life earlier for eating carrots for lunch. Idiot. He didn't know who he was talking to.
Neighbors with those.
And this is the probable cause statement from,
For the infotainment center,
for the infotainment center.
Oh, it didn't bother me at all.
November 19th.
I know you would think that usually, like, it used to bother me when people would call me fat. But this guy, I just laughed at him. I couldn't help it. Because I'm like, that's the best you got? I love food. I love being a foodie. Correct, Gunter. Yeah, that's what hubby puts in the tacos. That's why they're so yummy. Which I'm going to go heat them up in a minute. I was just so disappointed because that was the best he had. That was it. I already know that. And I accept it. I'm fine with that. So disappointing. People gotta try harder.
November 19th, 2019? Okay, so I don't recall who specifically said that they saw
Right?
the gray colored hardtop 2-door Jeep.
I'm thinking
It
so.
was, however, at this juncture that I do know that was the vehicle we were looking at from the photographs and from the LPR hits.
Right, I'm gonna heat it up.
It was an alleged
You convinced
vehicle,
me.
But that was not the vehicle that the neighbors described to you. Is that correct?
I did not have any vehicles described to me by a neighbor specifically, no.
So you swore that in your statement to take out that infotainment center to that 2-door gray hardtop Jeep, right? You're the police officer. You're asking for a warrant to do this because this is your probable cause. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're saying in that
She's so
that neighbors
snarky.
confirmed that they saw a gray colored hardtop 2-door Jeep, but that was not true.
I suppose the one word that I could exchange from anything is a dark colored hardtop 2-door Jeep. But at this point in my investigation, I had confirmed that it was a gray colored 2-door Jeep.
Thank you. Actually, you might want to hold it.
Simply best.
There's something else in this affidavit that I'd like you to look at.
If I can know what page you're showing him.
Where's the top shelf?
Thank you.
It is this last paragraph, correct? Ms. Daybell?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let me review
Just the first underlined
the first
part
one, okay.
of that paragraph. Have you reviewed that, Detective?
The first underline I just did. Do you want me to check the second line as well?
I would then ask to know, I'm sorry, what section you're actually showing him that's underlined?
It's just the third paragraph.
So,
Your Honor, we may want to sidebar again.
all right, can I see the?
I know. Come on, baby. Daddy already gave them to you. Why is it so quiet? Oh, they're on another sidebar. This is about their third one.
Detective, in preparing to investigate this crime, would you say, is it fair to say that most of the information that you gleaned is from Brandon Boudreaux?
In this initial investigation, yes.
Okay. And you were in constant contact with him during that time, in the early days of this investigation?
In the early days and then throughout the progression of the investigation.
And you were on a first name basis, is that correct?
Yes. Again, that's not uncommon for me to do in really all my investigations.
So most people don't call you Detective Pillar?
Not typically. It depends on how the length of the investigation and the type of investigation that it is, but especially with victims and witnesses, I try to keep it casual.
Now, when you were giving back the Tesla, the window was thrown away, is that correct?
The window was discarded.
And the Tesla was given back.
To Mr. Boudreaux, yes.
Did he come pick it up, or was it driven back over there?
From what I recall, it was picked up by him at the Property and Evidence Building.
And were there any further instructions with that? Like, now you can get it fixed, you can do anything you want with it? Like, how does that work?
Essentially, it was, yes, here's your vehicle returned. We'll be in contact regarding the investigation and my contact with the individuals you provided for follow-up.
Okay. And then that was the end of that contact with any of the evidence that was taken at the time?
On October 2nd, yes.
Yeah.
And the fragments of the projectile, those were taken in an evidence bag and put into evidence at Gilbert Police Department?
From the scene directly to the police department, yes. Or
Was
the
there-
Property Evidence Building.
This is
Was
day
there any other
4.
evidence taken to the property evidence building?
I believe there was a cigarette butt. I believe there was multiple photographs of other physical evidence I do not recall us taking.
You don't recall what?
I don't recall taking other physical evidence from the scene off the top of
So a cigarette butt?
I believe a cigarette butt was, it was across the street and a neighbor thought it was inconsistent with being near his house because he didn't smoke.
Okay. Was DNA taken off of the cigarette butt?
No, I believe we still have it retained in our property evidence building.
So if you would have taken the DNA off the cigarette butt, then you might have a person who was smoking it?
We would
At the
probably
scene?
have a DNA profile of somebody who's walking down the street smoking a cigarette, yes.
So you didn't really think it was connected to this incident
Not
necessarily?
No,
Okay. Why was it collected?
because it was within the crime scene tape at this time and the detective who spoke at the
I
scene
don't think he
provided the information,
smoked.
thought it should be collected.
And during the course of your investigation, you never discovered that Brandon Boudreaux was a smoker, right?
No.
Or that
I
Alex
don't think
Costa was a
so.
smoker, right?
No.
No. He was not a smoker.
Did you ask Mr. Boudreaux if he owned any firearms at that time on October 2nd?
I believe so.
And do you remember what his answer was?
I don't believe he had any firearms in his possession that were his.
Strangely
And you
enough,
said the house was cleared.
natural.
Did someone go through the house and cleared the house?
I knew this from officers telling me, and then again, I had to watch all the body-worn camera footage for media release and redaction purposes, so I learned the officers did clear the house prior to detective arrival.
And they went through the garage as well?
Yes.
Was either
When you came up on the scene, was the garage open or closed?
The garage was open.
an aneurysm or heart attack?
Do you know about what time you had arrived there?
Approximately 10:30. The call was made at approximately 9:13 in the morning, and detectives arrived at approximately 10:30 a.m.
And when do you think that you left, when you initially left, did you leave your car there because you drove the Tesla? Is that correct?
When I left the scene, once we took the Tesla at the property building,
Mhm.
yes, my assigned vehicle was left there secured, and then again, a detective followed me to the property and evidence building where we met with property technicians on arrival.
If he wasn't, I think we could imagine what would have happened to him. Thank God he is older.
In your interview with Melanie, she provided you with some information and then called you back, you said, around October 14th? Is that correct?
Yes.
And at that time, did you just refer her to an attorney?
I listened to her grievances, and then her concern was primarily about the custody of their children, and I referred her to speak with an attorney regarding custodial issues.
Because it's not something that you really give advice about, right? Like as the detective.
That's not my expertise, but I do encourage people to speak with attorneys who specialize in family matters.
Way too close.
But she came to you because were you aware that Brandon had not returned the children to her?
Sustained its relevance.
About how long was that conversation that you had with Melanie around the 14th?
10 minutes.
Was that on the phone or in person?
It was by phone.
So she was seeking help, but you really didn't have any for her, is that correct?
Sustained.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Redirect.
It's the sigh for me. Like she's exhausted from questioning him. Interesting fact, Melanie went to go pick up her kids from Brandon, and guess who drove her there to get them? Adam Cox. Or Alex Cox. Wrong brother, sorry. Think of what he did to Tylee and JJ. And the rumor is that she was already referring to two of them being dark. I know, I agree. I could throw a punch or two. What, Nana? Nala agrees. Nala's always been pretty vocal about Lori Daybell. Anytime I cover her, she has something to say on that one. I wonder how much time will actually be questioning witnesses and how much will be spent on sidebar. She didn't snap. 100%. She still thinks that she's going to be saved from all this. Her and Chad. Keep in mind, before this happened, Chad is the one who gave Alex a blessing. And that blessing came with a rule to always protect his sister. So imagine if your sister tells you that these people are zombies or they're possessed or whatever it may be, wouldn't you think that would imply the only thing to keep her safe is to you know? His job.
Detective, I'm going to go back to some of the questions that we started with yesterday. It's kind of also come in through today. During your investigation, and through testimony you heard here, did we have a witness, Robert Abitamarco, that just said the Jeep was dark colored?
Mm-hmm.
No specifics of what color that was, just dark.
Correct.
And then we've heard Brandon thought that the vehicle was some sort of camo or green color.
It sure is.
And then eventually, we also learned that through statements made by Brandon Boudreaux to both Officer Rob and yourself, that he believed this case was tied to an incident in Chandler. Did you learn that Lori Vallow, in fact, had a dark-colored Jeep?
Yes.
And when you were able to obtain those photographs, did you learn that the Jeep was then gray?
Yes.
You were
Yes.
asked about a probable cause statement that you wrote on November 19th, 2019. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was that after you learned about the gray vehicle, the gray Jeep that Lori Vallow had on July 11th of 2019 in Chandler, Arizona, at that incident?
Yes.
And in that probable cause statement, do you just in fact say that it was a dark-colored or gray-colored Jeep?
Yes.
You don't actually say that a specific neighbor said that or where that information came from.
Correct. So I was working with multiple detectives.
So you're using all of the different information that you gleaned, which included the fact that this defendant owned a gray Jeep Wrangler with Texas license plates, and that was put into your statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Is Trina K about to do it? Kind of feels like it.
Now, you were asked a lot about the measurements of the Tesla and trajectory.
Nope, detour.
Did Brandon Boudreaux stop at the time of the shooting and put down a little ticky-tack marker and say, better note this for later so I can tell the detectives exactly where my vehicle was when I was shot?
No, he did not.
I think a lot of that was
Brandon Boudreaux get out of
orchestrated.
his car and go over and mark the exact end of the Jeep so that you would know exactly where that was when he was shot?
No, he did not.
Did he go over and tell the person, whoa, I gotta wait and find out exactly how this rifle barrel is sticking out of the back of your Jeep so that later on, they'll be able to document the height, the angle, if it's up, if it's down, if it's a little to the right or left, so that later on they'll be able to do some trajectory?
No,
So none of that happened.
none of that happened.
Were you surprised he didn't do that?
Not at all.
So you did receive information from another neighbor that they saw the Jeep in the approximate same location of where Brandon Boudreaux saw it,
Yes.
parked there idling, running,
Yes.
same direction as Brandon gave,
Yes.
the same Texas plate as Brandon gave,
Yes.
and same dark tint as Brandon said.
Yes.
So when you talk about this only being Brandon, that's not accurate, right?
Correct.
In fact, Robert Abitamarco said he didn't even know Brandon because he just moved in, right?
Correct.
And so ultimately, when we're talking about trajectory, without knowing all of those specifics, were you aware of any way to recreate how the rifle was held, what angle it was at when it fired that shot into the Tesla, not knowing where the Tesla exactly was either?
No, unable to determine that.
You were asked about the glass as well. When you package items, you put them in a box, a bag, a plastic bag, something like that, right? Depending on the piece of evidence you're collecting.
Yes.
Did you have any way to keep that glass from never disintegrating anymore so that it wouldn't change from the way it looked on October 2nd if you impounded it?
No, with shattered glass, it would continue to shatter. There's no way to package it to stay in its form when it goes through.
So when you're talking about impounding that item or just throwing it away, if you put it in a box and you travel it to impound and then somebody throws it up into wherever it goes, could you say if you pulled it back out 5 years later that it looked exactly like it did that day when it fell onto the ground?
Absolutely.
So is that why photographs were taken there?
Photographs, yes.
And no leaf blower either.
You were asked a lot about
Upgrade.
the interview of Brandon. During that audio recording, have you listened to that?
I have.
You told us you were in your vehicle, right?
That's correct.
And was your AC blowing very hard?
It was a warm day out, so yes, we were both, I was sitting in the driver's seat, he was in the passenger, and the vehicle was on with AC running.
Did Brandon talk soft at times?
Yes,
In listening to the recording, is it often difficult to hear what he's saying?
yes,
And would you agree that the best evidence would be the actual recording versus someone's interpretation of what they believe he was saying?
yes.
It's because it was an
When
upgrade.
you were considering the evidence at the scene, in addition to Robert Abitamarco, when you looked at that ring camera footage that we saw in court from Lynette Mendoza, did the black vehicle that you see appear to be consistent with the Tesla?
Yes,
Was it driving in the general direction of or towards Brandon Boudreau's home on that video?
yes,
And was there a timestamp showing when you heard that loud bang after that vehicle went by?
yes.
When was that?
It's at 9:13 and some seconds.
And was the 911 call made by Brandon on that video?
Yes,
So was that another piece of evidence that was considered by you in corroborating what Brandon had told you and what Robert Abitamarco had seen and what the physical evidence told you?
yes,
Catnip, are you in here?
When you were looking at the Tesla itself, you advised us that you have seen bullet holes into vehicles previously,
yes,
and you have seen fragments of projectiles previously.
yes.
When you looked at that bullet hole and those fragments, did you have any question as to whether or not that Tesla had been shot?
No question at all.
Did you ever recover a gun that you knew was used in this?
No,
Would the fact that it was one type of rifle change the fact that Brandon Boudreau's vehicle was shot that day?
no,
Could a handgun kill someone?
yes,
Could a rifle kill someone?
yes.
Unalive, ma'am. Unalive, please. This smells so good. My Nix thingy, my smushy thing.
You were asked yesterday about LPR, license plate reader. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
And we had heard from Tom Miller about the DEA license plate readers.
That's correct.
Is that the only license plate readers that exist?
No,
I do.
In this investigation,
I
well, the
do.
defendant had asked you about there being no other license plate readers showing this Jeep. Is that accurate?
that is not accurate.
Was there a LPR hit for the Jeep Wrangler Texas plate LWD
Thank
0997
you.
in a city south of Rexburg, Idaho on September 30th of 2019 at about 8:10 p.m.?
Yes,
Was there
They
an
really
LPR
do.
hit in Idaho for the Jeep Wrangler license plate LWD 0997 on US Highway 20 near Rexburg, Idaho at 3:54 and 4:28 a.m. on October 3rd?
yes,
Would that again be consistent with other evidence that you learned in this case from other individuals?
yes,
You were asked a bit about a cast report done by Nick Balance. Do you recall that?
I do.
Did you create that?
I did not create that report.
Did you provide some of the cell phone records that we admitted and talked about that you obtained through search warrants to Mr. Balance?
Yes,
Is the
And
door
did-
opening?
Information that he gleaned from that and that he made into that report that you reviewed appear consistent again with a timeline of that Jeep leaving Idaho on the 30th of September and being down in Arizona on October 2nd of 2019.
yes, it did.
Is this it? Do it. Do it. Do it.
You were asked about a lot of different emails and information that you had with interactions that you had with Brandon Boudreau. Do you recall that?
I do recall that, yes.
And would it be fair to say, Detective, that at the time of February of 2020, you were investigating multiple cases?
Yes, that is accurate.
Would it be fair to say that in February of 2020, you were also investigating multiple cases with other agencies involving Melanie Boudreau?
Yes,
She's tiptoeing. Just full on dive in, Trina K. We're here for it. Just go in.
At the time of this shooting, we have discussed that this defendant and her brother, Alex Cox, were living in Rexburg, Idaho, correct?
correct.
She's
Were you
making
then
Lori
working
sweat.
with the Rexburg Police Department to help obtain information from Rexburg and other counties around there in relation to this investigation?
Yes.
Jessica, you hear that?
So in any time when you were obtaining search warrants or continuing your investigation, were you pulling in information being provided to you from people such as the DEA LPR reader,
Yes.
Fremont County LPR readers,
Yes.
information being obtained by police up in Idaho,
Yes.
Yes.
search warrants that they were executing,
Yes.
as well as search warrants that you executed up there on the Jeep?
Correct.
Was all of that put together when you were determining whether or not you had information to corroborate what Brandon Boudreaux told you on October 2nd of 2019?
Yes. It was a collective effort.
You guys are building too much anticipation.
Although you are the
Just
case
do it.
agent in this matter because it occurred in Gilbert, did you have to rely heavily on aid from the Rexburg Police Department and other agencies to obtain evidence in Idaho?
Yes.
And are those detectives in a better position to discuss things such as storage units or burner phones that were purchased up there?
Yes, they are.
Although you are familiar with those and they were all relevant to this investigation, would it be fair to say that since they obtained it, they're in a better position to testify as to it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have no other questions for this witness.
Are there any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? If so, please pass those down. See at least one.
Please have asked what he was doing, what that other issue was, so that they could throw the door wide the hell open. She's teasing. She's like, I'm gonna half step in, half step out, half step in and get back the hell out. Trina K, stop playing with us. Just do it. Do it. Some of us have enough wrinkles. We don't need extras. Just do it. If you don't, she's going to push harder. She wants it out. I think she wants it out so that way she could claim she's even more of a victim and she's being targeted by the police. Right? I'm the expression talker. I cannot help it. I've done it my whole life. It's hard to turn it off. And so now I've got my expression lines and I do not like them. What door? Well, this is Lori's third and final trial as of right now. She was on trial the first time for unaliving her 2 children and conspiring to unalive her current husband's wife. And then after that trial was done, they had the trial that was just a month and a half, 2 months ago, and that was her conspiring to unalive her 4th husband. This one is for conspiring to unalive her niece's former husband. But they think that threat will calm Lori down. She wants that door opened. Lori wants that open. And I think it has to do with what her reasoning to be for a defense. That she's the target. She's the victim. Corruption. I have her last trial on my YouTube as well.
Are there any other juror questions? All right. In your experience, is it unusual for witnesses to confuse colors or not remember them accurately?
Good question.
Yes. I'm going to answer this for you, Your Honor.
I'll let the parties follow up on that if they need to. The next question is, were the attempted phone calls to wife recorded during the in-car interview of Brandon on the day of the shooting? I guess, let's clarify, did you record those phone calls?
To the second question, yes, those calls were recorded.
And were voicemails left explaining the situation?
A voicemail was left requesting a response for a callback, not explaining the situation. That was from Brandon. And then I know I later called and left a message explaining my involvement as a detective who wanted to talk to Melanie Boudreaux at the time. And she later responded, and the interview happened the next day.
All right. Follow up on that question from the defense, or those 3 questions from the defense? From the state?
In terms of colors and not remembering them accurately, You said it's not unusual for a witness to not remember always a color.
They finally found a microphone. Sorry, but that's a big deal.
Is that due to just sort of the circumstances surrounding what's happening when they're trying to observe these things at a vehicle?
Yeah, so I'll answer this in a couple parts. It is not uncommon for people to commonly mistake black for white or red for blue or different colors, assuming they're not colorblind to begin with. You amplify that situation, for lack of better words, in a traumatic situation, going out to multiple violent scenes, or even not a violent scene, just an emotional scene, maybe between a domestic dispute. It is quite common that colors for vehicles or clothing or hairstyles or hair color are mistaken.
It's plugged in.
Especially when you add the traumatic element to it. So.
No other questions?
All right, you can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So you can call this next witness.
Thank you.
Here's an interesting fact that you may not know. The Jeep that was used in this specific case to attempt to unalight Brandon Bordeaux, that was the same Jeep that was considered Tylee's Jeep. Her daughter, who she had unalived. You're kidding, right?
All right, you're going to come right up here in front of my clerk and be sworn in.
You totally just punked me. That's cruel and unusual punishment. Yeah, if anyone can find her.
All right, have a seat up here to my left.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Vanessa Milkey. I'm a forensic scientist 3 for the City of Mesa Forensic Services.
How long have you worked there?
I have been there for over 12 years now.
And can you tell us your training and experience to work both as a forensic scientist and then, I guess let's start there.
Okay. I have a bachelor's degree in biological sciences from Arizona State University. While in college, I was a forensic services intern for about 8 months for the City of Mesa Forensic Services. After college, I was a laboratory technician for United Blood Services for 1 year. Prior to my current position, I was a crime scene technician for the Chandler Police Department for almost 2 years. After I was a crime scene technician and I was hired at the City of Mesa, I completed the required serology and DNA training that took about 2 years.
All right, so what is your current role? What do you specifically do?
I examine items for the presence of biological fluids, conduct DNA analysis, prepare samples for DNA analysis, take notes, write reports, and review reports.
So you talked about training specifically at the City of Mesa with regards to DNA testing and analysis. How long of a process is that?
It took me about 2 years to complete all of the required training, and then every single year I'm required to do a minimum of 8 hours of continuing education.
Welcome back. I asked her and she slowed down just because you asked. It was totally her the whole time.
And are there any type of quality assurance processes to
is it?
ensure that your analysis is correct and your conclusions are accurate?
Yes, during training, I was required to complete competency tests along the way for each new thing that I learned. And then every single year, I have to do 2 proficiency tests to show that I'm proficient in serology and DNA analysis.
I didn't
Now,
speed
at the
the
Mesa
thing up.
Police Department, do you separate sort of this process and have one person take cuttings of swabs or evidence to prepare them for testing, and then another person who will take those to develop those unknown profiles for analysis?
Yes, we have serology and DNA. So there are some analysts that just do serology, and there's some that are trained in both serology and DNA analysis. For a particular case, it could be the same individual doing serology and DNA, or it could be different analysts.
I bet he's excited.
So let's start with talking about DNA. What is it?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's considered the blueprint of life. You get half of your DNA from your mother and the other half from your father. Every individual has a different DNA profile with the exception of identical twins.
When the police are collecting biological evidence,
Does anybody else feel dumb right now? Because I got my degree in journalism. If I would have gotten a degree in her field, I would have known a hell of a lot more than I do now.
from a scene for DNA testing, are there different types of biological evidence that can be used for DNA testing?
Yes, the a DNA profile can be generated from hair, semen, saliva, sweat, skin cells, blood.
So you talked about skin cells, and if we are talking about swabbing different areas that people touch, if a person touches an item, do they always leave behind DNA?
No, not always. It depends on the type of surface. If an individual is wearing gloves, they're not going to leave behind their DNA.
I couldn't do it either anymore.
Does the environment also impact potentially your ability to obtain DNA from a swab surface that someone touched?
Yes, there are different environmental conditions such as heat, moisture, sunlight that can all damage the DNA. And also if there's any type of cleaning products that have been applied, such as bleach.
Are you?
So just because a person touches an item doesn't mean you're going to be able to find the DNA there.
That's correct.
And then we've been
If you were ever considering committing a crime and pinning it on your twin, I would highly not recommend that.
talking about sort of a DNA profile. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, a DNA profile is kind of like a graph. There's different locations that I'm looking at that I am comparing from, let's say, a question sample to a known sample. So a known sample is something where I know where the sample was collected from. A typical known sample is...
You guys saw that story of those two identical twins that married two identical twin husbands that were brothers? She was found guilty in both. God, I'm not the only
buccal
one.
swabs, which cells are the cells from the inside of your cheek. So I have an expected DNA profile. And an unknown profile would be something from a crime scene where I don't know what the DNA profile is, but I'm going to look at all 23 different locations and I'm going to compare that to my known samples.
Sins of them.
So when you're creating a DNA profile, do law enforcement agencies generally look at the same locations on the DNA, long strand of DNA?
Yes, different laboratories use different what's called kits, but it's all very similar locations.
You're not looking at every spot on the DNA chromosome, right?
No, just 23 different locations.
When you are looking at a DNA profile from a known source let's start with a known source, are you able to generally create a single source DNA profile?
From a known sample?
Yeah.
Yes, typically I am able to generate a full DNA profile from a known sample.
Okay. And like someone's blood would be a known sample?
Yes.
Now, if you have a cutting or a swab from a crime scene, are there different things that might affect your ability to develop a full DNA profile?
Yes, sometimes there's not enough DNA present for me to have a conclusive DNA profile, or sometimes there's too much DNA there where it's too complex, where I can't pull anything out or make any comparisons or conclusions.
I wonder if that's who I was talking about. I don't remember show or anything, but I remember seeing something on some kind of television. I don't know what it was. Probably the same people.
Is one of the things we're talking about when we say there's too much DNA referred to often as a mixture?
A mixture is anything that's more than one individual contributing to that DNA sample.
And if you have a mixture, are you always able to tell us all the people who are part of that?
No, sometimes there's just too much information there where I can't separate out the different numbers and determine how many people are contributing to the sample.
How do you think they do that? Do you think they make their children call each other cousins or siblings? And then do they then get confused as to which child belongs to whom? Just things I wonder sometimes.
When you develop a DNA profile from a swab from a crime scene, and there's a mixture of people who have contributed to that, do you ever have anything called a major contributor? What is that?
Yes, a major contributor is just the individual that's contributing the majority of the DNA to the sample.
And if you have a mixture, you told us you're not always able to tell all the people. Are you always able to tell us how many people contributed?
No, I don't.
And then, does each twin go on to have a set of twins that also go on to have a set of twins, and then we just have a small twin army?
Always know how many people contributed, but we usually give a minimum number that the analyst would think is contributing to that mixture.
My mind's a scary place.
So if we see there's a major contributor, is there such a thing as a minor contributor?
Yes, the opposite of the major would be the minor. So if there's a major component, there's also
Hello, fellow club member.
a minor component, and with every sample, the minor component may not be conclusive.
When you are creating these DNA profiles of these unknown sources, are you able to tell sometimes if there's a male or female contributor?
Yes, there's a sex-determining marker called amylogenin. So a female would have an X and an X, and a male would have an X and a Y. If I'm looking at that sex-determining marker, if I see an X and a Y, then that is an indication that the profile is from a male. If there's a really big X and a really small Y, that would be an indication that there's a female present and there's also a male present. Because if there's just one male or two males, I would expect the X and the Y to be about the same height.
So when you are provided with a known sample of someone
Should we start taking bets as to Lori going off the hinges today?
and some questioned sample that was taken from a crime scene, what are you asked to do with that? What does the analysis involve?
The DNA process is a 4-step process. The first step is called extraction, where the cells are broken open and the DNA is released from the cell. The second step is quantitation, where I'm determining how much DNA I have in a sample, if any at all. The third step is amplification. It's kind of similar to a DNA Xeroxing machine, where I'm making millions of copies of the DNA. And the last step is called detection, where I'm generating a DNA profile. The DNA profile from the unknown profiles can be compared to the DNA profile from the known individuals to determine if there's a match or no match.
Okay. So in January of 2020, was the Mesa Police Department lab doing DNA testing for the Gilbert Police Department?
Yes, and we still do.
And so was the process for the Gilbert Police Department to send over any known and any questioned DNA samples to you to see if you could develop DNA profiles and reach any conclusions?
Yes.
In this case, were you provided with several cuttings from Lisa Perry from swabs from a vehicle?
Yes, I was.
And were you
I guess that bedhead's getting to her.
provided with a DNA profile for an Alexander Cox that was developed by Emilyn Sabinosa?
After I completed analysis of my samples, I compared the results from my samples to any
100%.
known individuals that were also submitted for the same case.
And was that for the Alexander Cox?
Correct.
Were you then asked to develop DNA profiles from those cuttings that Lisa Perry had given to you?
Yes.
And then compare those to Alexander Cox?
Correct.
Were you provided a cutting of a swab from the steering wheel of the Jeep?
Yes.
Were you able to create a DNA profile from that?
May I refer to my report?
If that would help refresh your recollection.
Go ahead.
Yeah, do you have that with you?
I do.
Or do you need a copy?
Yeah, then they go on to the next person.
Yeah, go ahead.
She's done that for several witnesses so far this trial and last. It all is what can she get out
Yes,
of it.
I was able to
If it's nothing, that she
generate
has
a DNA
nothing.
profile for the sample.
From the steering wheel.
Yes.
Were you able to determine how many contributors were in? Well, let me ask you, was that a mixture?
It was a mixture. I have a major conclusive profile and the minor portion is inconclusive.
Okay. And for the minor, were you able to determine how many, I guess, contributors were in that mixture?
I have a minimum of 3 contributors.
Okay. Were you able to tell anything about the sex of the major contributor?
The major contributor is of male origin.
And were you able to tell anything about the sex of the minor contributors?
Since it's inconclusive, I didn't make any comparisons, or I didn't make any conclusions for the minor component.
Now you're asking the right questions. I love you for asking this question. Sadly, no. No. But I could totally see her doing that. No, the bet is whether or not Lori is going to act a fool in court again today. Because she has been every court hearing. She's like went off the rails for something. I'll do a poll. Let me know.
Did you compare that major contributor DNA profile from the swab of the steering wheel to the known DNA profile of Alex Cox?
The smiley face, if she is going to, hit the cry face if you think she's going to be chilled today.
Yes, the major profile obtained from this item matches the DNA profile from Alexander Cox.
Do you have any statistics as to the frequency of that occurrence?
Yes.
Could you tell us those?
Why can't I vote?
Go ahead.
The frequency of occurrence of an unrelated individual in a random population having the same genetic profile as the major DNA profile obtained from this item is approximately 1 in 975 sextillion African Americans, 1 in 111 quintillion Caucasians, and 1 in 344 quintillion Southwestern Hispanics.
That's not fair. I wanted to vote.
What is a quintillion?
A quintillion is a 1 followed by 18 zeros.
Thank
Were
you to the 11 of you that
provided with
participated.
additional other swab cuttings to also attempt to develop DNA profiles?
Yes.
Were you provided with a cutting from the passenger seat belt buckle?
Yeah.
For the record, I do think she will. I don't think she can just be chill and just take it. I think that this girl is going to act up every single day that they give her a stage to perform on. No, I think they meant if mods that set up a poll cannot do it.
Were you able to develop a
Not
DNA
sure.
profile from that?
No, this profile was inconclusive due to an insufficient amount of DNA.
What does that mean?
It means that I didn't have enough information to conclusively give any results that are reliable.
So it doesn't mean there's no DNA there.
Correct.
Just means you didn't get enough DNA to do any type of comparison.
Yes.
Okay. Were you provided with a cutting from Lisa Perry from the swab from the passenger interior door handle?
Yes.
Were you able to develop a DNA profile for that?
No, this was also an inconclusive DNA result.
Was there again insufficient DNA?
Yes.
Were you provided with swabs from the lug nuts from the spare tire of that Jeep vehicle?
Yes.
Were you able to develop a DNA profile from that?
No, this DNA profile was inconclusive due to an insufficient amount of DNA.
So again, there's DNA there, correct?
Correct.
It's not fair.
But just not enough of it for you to do any comparisons.
Yes.
Were you provided with a cutting of the swab from the gear shift of that Jeep?
Yes.
And were you able to develop a DNA profile from that?
Yes, this is a DNA mixture that indicates that there's at least 3 individuals of male and female origin.
Thank you for the
Did you have a
shares.
major contributor to that DNA profile?
I did not.
Were you able to make any determinations as to sex of any of those contributors?
Yes, I made a determination that Alexander Cox cannot be eliminated as a contributor to the DNA mixture.
What does that mean?
That means that when looking at the DNA profile that I generated from the gear shifter,
She's gonna eat this girl alive when it's her turn, is what I mean.
the different numbers that I have on my DNA profile for the gear shifter, the numbers that Alexander Cox has on his DNA profile, he cannot be eliminated from my conclusive locations. So for example, if he has, let's say, a 7 and an 8 at one location, the DNA profile that I generated from the gear shifter also has those same numbers. So there's not a difference in the profile from the gear shifter and the profile from Alexander Cox.
So it's his.
Now, so for the gear shift, you can't eliminate him because there's no inconsistencies in those profiles. There's just not enough information for you to make that conclusion.
Yes, there's no inconsistencies between the two.
Thank you. Were you provided with cuttings from the swab from Lisa Perry from the driver's side seatbelt buckle?
Yes.
Were you able to develop a DNA profile from that?
Yes, the major DNA profile from this item matches the DNA profile from Alexander Cox.
So is that a mixture then?
It is a mixture. The minor is inconclusive and the major is conclusive.
Bet you
So
it's Tylee.
the major was
the other one.
The DNA profile that you compared then to Alex Cox?
The major profile that I obtained matches Alexander Cox, correct?
And did you have statistics for the frequency of occurrence for this match from the driver's side seat belt buckle when you compared that DNA profile to Alexander Cox?
Yes. The frequency of occurrence of an unrelated individual in a random population having the same genetic profile as the major DNA profile obtained from this item is approximately 1 in 123 nonillion African Americans, 1 in 715 septillion Caucasians, and 1 in 2.78 octillion Southwestern Hispanics.
I'm sorry, I think you just exploded my brain.
Septillion. I think that's a different number. What is that?
Septillion is a 1 followed by 24 zeros.
So a higher frequency even than the other match.
Yes.
So in this case, 2 of the swabs that you tested, both the steering wheel itself and the driver's side seat belt buckle, had major contributors where the DNA profile from those 2 items matched the DNA profile of Alexander Cox.
Yes.
Did that conclude your involvement in comparing these swabs to the known sample of Alexander Cox?
It did.
Thank you. The state has no other questions.
Here we go.
Cross?
No questions, Your Honor.
Any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? I don't see any. All right, thank you. You can step down.
Thank you.
I think my
All right, let's recess for lunch. Can
My
we
thing's
resume
broken.
at 1:15, everyone?
because I was wrong.
We'll resume at 1:15. Please remember the admonition.
I thought she would too. I'm shocked. I really hope this doesn't bring us to current because then we don't have any more patients with parameters. Went too far. There we go. Yeah, I could see that too. It's the pretty witnesses, the ones that are overly pretty, that she gets threatened by. Like she's threatened by Trina K, 100%.
All right, please be seated. The jury is present. We're back on the record. The state can call its next witness.
State calls Kyle Mueller.
All right, sir, come on up.
Bob Mueller.
Just stand in front of my clerk here and be sworn in. All right, you're gonna have go up this ramp. Have a seat to my left.
I can't. Not with her baby voice, not even.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Sure. My name is Kyle Mueller. I'm a forensic scientist section supervisor with the City of Phoenix Police Department Crime Lab
How long have you worked for the City of Phoenix Crime Lab?
for about 24 years now.
And can you tell us the different duties you have done over those 24 years?
Sure. I started out in the controlled substances section where I analyzed illicit drugs for the presence or absence of an illicit drug. I then transferred to the trace evidence section in 2007 and was a forensic scientist 2, and then a forensic scientist 3, and then a 4, and then now I'm the supervisor. In the trace evidence section, I analyze gunshot residue kits, full wear and tire track impression evidence, fibers, tape, and miscellaneous unknowns.
Can you tell us the education and training you've had in the area of trace evidence specific to GSR, gunshot residue?
Sure. Well, to start, I have a bachelor's of science in biochemistry. That's from the University of Arizona. I also have a master's of science in forensic science from the University of Florida.
Yes, we love this TikTok shop. The TikTok shop is great. Thank you for that.
I've been trained by senior members of the crime lab, but I've also received several training opportunities for trace evidence, whether it's internal or external where possible. Specifically towards gunshot residue, there's a lot of history in the scientific literature for reading about what GSR is and how it's created. It's also a matter of going through the specific training program with the Phoenix PD Crime Lab. So I went through that. I'm also proficiency tested on a yearly basis.
Can you tell us how long was that training at the City of Phoenix to work in the trace area?
Well, the training is ongoing, but so each subdiscipline in trace evidence, you need to go through the training program and then become competent in that subdiscipline. So for specifically, for gunshot residue, it was about 6 to 8 months.
And then you said you have ongoing proficiency training. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Sure. Every year I receive a proficiency test to verify that I'm valid or competent in analyzing gunshot residue.
That means she can never get this NYX smushy lip balm that's matte, you know. See? Never, because it's only in the TikTok shop.
Well, let's start with then, what is gunshot residue?
Sure. Gunshot residue, or GSR for short, are small metallic particles that are formed from the discharge of a firearm. So when someone shoots a gun, these small particles are made up of the elements of lead, antimony, and barium that are from the primer paste inside the bottom of a cartridge
That's
casing.
a really tough
That
question.
primer paste essentially is disintegrated, and we're left with these GSR particles that escape from any part of the firearm that's not completely closed in the manufacturing process. There are effectively 3 classifications that we test for gunshot residue. There's characteristic particles that have all 3 elements of lead, antimony, and barium. There's also consistent particles that have 2 of the 3 of those, so lead and barium, or lead and antimony, or antimony and barium. There's also commonly associated particles, and those are just lead particles. So that plume of smoke that you see when you shoot a gun, a lot of that plume, if you will, are these small metallic particles.
When that plume lands on things, is it visible? Can I look over here and say, hey, there's a GSR particle?
No, these are very small. They're anywhere from 5, 10, maybe 5 or 15 microns in width. To give you an example, if you were to take a cross-section of a human hair, that's around 60 to 90 microns. So these are very small particles. You can't see them with the naked eye. We have a very high-powered microscope in the in the trace evidence section called an SEM, and that's what we use for our analysis.
So does it matter if someone fires a handgun or a rifle? Is it going to be the same particles you're looking for?
Those same particles are generated regardless of the caliber of firearm used or the ammunition used. We still look for those 3 elements within that same type of particle.
It throws me off my axis too.
When someone discharges a gun, what factors might impact whether or not that GSR residue particles are left on a person or objects around the gun?
Well, you can imagine that when someone shoots a gun, it's kind of like this.
For the love of everything holy, please stop using unsafe words. TikTok thinks we're 5. You cannot say those things. You're gonna get me bananaed. I think it's time for a face mask.
That plume of smoke that's generated, it's kind of like smoking a cigarette. That plume of smoke is going to travel one way or the other based on.
Is there anything you guys are not going to bring up? Just out of utter and total curiosity?
If you're outside, if you're inside, if you're, and it's a windy day or if it's raining. So if you're in an enclosed space, depending on where the wind velocity is, it's going to depend on where that travels.
So if a person fires a gun from inside a vehicle while it's parked, would you in general expect to find GSR particles inside that vehicle?
Yes, it's certainly possible.
Okay. Can GSR particles over time get lost or removed from whatever object they have attached to after the gun is discharged?
So these particles, like I said before, they're like a fine metallic dust. They don't have a half-life. They don't decay over time. They don't evaporate. They're simply just washed away. So if GSR particles are found on an object, they will stay there indefinitely until they're washed away.
Okay. Have you seen cases where GSR was found inside a vehicle weeks or months after someone has fired a gun inside that car?
It's possible, yes.
In a case where it's alleged that a person was inside a rear portion of a Jeep and fired a rifle out the back window, would it be within the normal scope of possibilities to locate GSR on the windows of that vehicle a month after the shooting?
It's possible, yes.
Would it be impacted if, say, someone went in the Jeep and sprayed some Windex and cleaned off all the windows? Would that then remove it?
That would be very,
Yes,
very
it
nice
would
of them
possibly
to
remove
do.
any GSR.
That would be so considerate to just go clean off somebody's windshield, their windows. That's so nice of them.
So when we're talking about collection of an item that's not immediately after the discharge, does the fact of someone cleaning or not cleaning the area around the discharge impact the potential to collect those particles?
Yes, it would potentially remove those particles.
That was a joke. Supposed to be anyways.
Can you tell us, in general, what you are provided with and then how you look for GSR particles with the kit you are given?
Sure. Depending on the case, a general GSR kit has vials inside of that kit. They're labeled usually about where they are collected from. There's essentially a plastic vial, and when you open up, when you open up the cap to that plastic vial, on the inside of that cap is a small aluminum stub that has effectively sticky tape on it. And that tape is used to sample an area. The portion being, or the idea behind that is that if you have GSR on an area, whether it's someone's hands or an inanimate object, you would then stub that sample, and then any GSR on that sample will then be transferred to that stub. Now, those GSR stubs are then introduced as evidence to the laboratory, and that's where I come in and I test that evidence. So the GSR vials and those stubs are essentially, they come in a GSR kit that's labeled depending on the evidence, and then start my note-taking process regarding what the GSR labels say and where they're taken from. And then I essentially take those stubs out of those vials and place them in an instrument called an SEM EDS. And that essentially stands for Scanning Electron Microscopy with Energy Dispersive X-ray Spectroscopy. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm introducing those stubs into that SEM, because it's a very high power microscope to view these very small particles. I then analyze the kit with a program that we have for looking for GSR particles. The program then generates a report of what it found, and And then I go back typically the next day and try to determine if these were actual GSR particles that were detected by the instrument or whether they were not. And then I compile my report with my results.
You told us earlier that there are 3 different elements you are looking for. What is the significance of locating 1, 2 of them together, or all 3 of those elements together in one particle?
So one particle that has all 3 elements is called characteristic, meaning that that is unlikely to have come from any other source in the environment other than from the discharge of a firearm. 2 of those, so a consistent particle is 2 of those elements, so lead and antimony, or lead and barium, or antimony and barium. And those are consistent particles, meaning that while they're also associated with the discharge of a firearm, they're also found in the environment.
That's funny.
Lead is also, lead is a commonly associated with particle. And while it's found in the environment, it's also found in, again, GSR, this plume of smoke that we see when someone discharges a weapon.
So you told us you work for the Phoenix Police Department. Do you still, or does your agency assist other agencies with processing GSR kits?
Yes, we do.
On January of 2020, were you provided with 2 GSR collection kits from the Gilbert Police Department?
Yes, I was.
And were those marked with the Gilbert property identification numbers of 645-886 and 645-888?
Yes.
Were you asked to analyze these?
I was.
When you receive those, do you note whether or not they are integrity seals have been kept there and that they are still properly sealed when they arrive to you?
Yes, I do.
And were they still properly sealed with all integrity seals on them?
Yes, they were.
Now the kits or the vials, do those come inside their own container and then each vial itself is also individually sealed? With the tag, I guess?
So the vials themselves that have the GSR stubs in them aren't individually sealed. They're usually anyway 3 to 4 of a pack, if you will, of vials. And then inside of that, or excuse me, those vials are then inside another envelope, which is inside the GSR kit.
Do the vials, though, have their own, I guess you indicated label, tape, don't want to say, going around them indicating what each one is from?
Yes.
Okay. So in this case, when you received those 2 kits, each of the vials had their own tape with the labeling and then were packaged in sealed packaging.
Yes, that's correct.
And when you were provided with these 2 items, these 2 kits, did you, can you tell us what your initial process was?
Sure. I received notification from the Gilbert Police Department where exactly these GSR vials were collected, so I could get a better idea of what to test first. So I got that information, and then I started my analysis on one of the GSR kits. From 3 of the vials were from the inside of the Jeep, specifically the windows.
Why did you want to test the windows of the Jeep versus the tabs that may have been from, say, the back of the seats of the Jeep?
Well, testing the windows first I thought was pertinent because they're more likely to not come into contact with an item that would previously had GSR on it.
Me too.
You know, if GSR is on the inside of a window, unless it's been cleaned, it would probably be there still.
Okay. The GSR kit that you decided to test, did that contain stubs from the passenger side interior back window, the passenger side interior window, and the driver's side interior window?
Yes.
I assume you used the same process with the SEM microscope that you described?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you independently confirm whether or not what the microscope located is in fact the items it indicates?
Correct.
For this one, starting with the passenger side interior back window, did you find any particles in that collection kit commonly associated with GSR?
Yes.
And so again, so we understand, for commonly associated, what does that mean?
That means those are lead particles.
Okay, so just the single individual lead particles, and you found those on that stub.
Correct.
So for that same passenger side interior back window, did you find any particles consistent with GSR?
Yes, I did.
And again, just so we understand, what does consistent with GSR mean?
That means 2 of the 3 elements from a characteristic particle are present.
And do you in fact even note how many of those particles you find?
Yes, I do.
When you are looking for those, do you count every single one on the entire stub? Or do you at some point say that's enough to show they're there?
After 10, essentially I stop. So if it's anything less than 10, I count and put that in my notes.
All right. When you were looking at this passenger side interior back window, did you find any particles that were characteristic of GSR?
Yes, I did.
And again, what does characteristic mean?
That means it has one particle that has the elements of lead, antimony, and barium that is kind of a round or amorphous morphology that is characteristic of being from the discharge of a firearm.
Okay. So
Pretend that you guys know nothing about what Lori's done. Pretend that this is the first time you're seeing her in the courtroom. Then tell me how you feel about this case so far.
So when you located the commonly associated, consistent with, and characteristic particles, what was your conclusion as to the kit that was used to collect from the passenger side interior back window?
Again, that area of the Jeep is.
If you want to see her last trial, I have it on my YouTube. Her first trial wasn't televised or streamed. However, I do have her statement at sentencing for her first trial. And it's an important one to know, especially if you're following this or going to be following this. I have tabs above my videos. Look for the Lori Vallow Daybell one. Good question. I'm starting to worry, though, about the lack of evidence.
It's consistent with being in the vicinity of a discharged firearm or even coming into contact with something that had GSR on it.
Okay. Was one of the other vials that we discussed from the passenger interior window?
Yes.
The one and only.
Did you find any particles commonly associated with GSR on that stub?
Yes, I did.
Her dear friend.
How about consistent with or characteristic of?
No, I did not.
Yes.
So what was your conclusion as to that vial where you just had particles commonly associated with GSR?
So to back up, when I put together my report, I took the results from all 3 samples that I tested and made my conclusion on that. If I'm looking at individual vials, so the vial that we just spoke about that had just the commonly associated with, that means that, again, a discharged weapon could have occurred within the vicinity of that sample being taken, but it could also come from an environmental source as well. But that's just for that one sample.
In a vehicle where a gun is discharged and the samples aren't collected till about a month later, why is it important to look at multiple locations?
Well, so when a gun is discharged and you think of that plume of smoke, that those GSR particles are going to travel anywhere potentially in the inside of that vehicle. So any of those areas could potentially have GSR on them. So when I when I performed my analysis on those samples, really finding where they are specifically in the Jeep isn't really an indication that something happened. It was just finding any in the Jeep. So it doesn't really matter where they originated or where I found them. It's just that they were present.
Okay, so you're really just looking to see, are those characteristic particles present within this Jeep that would indicate that a gun may have been discharged within that vehicle?
That is correct.
So we talked about 2 of the 3 vials. Was the 3rd vial the driver's side interior window?
Yes.
Did you find particles commonly associated with GSR on that vial from the driver's side interior window?
Yes, I did.
Did you find particles consistent with GSR on that driver's side interior window?
Yes.
And did you find particles characteristic of GSR on that driver's side passenger or driver's side interior window?
Yes, I did.
When you then were looking at all three of those in different areas within that Jeep, were you then able to reach an overall conclusion as to this vehicle where these kits were taken from?
Yes, I was.
What was your conclusion?
That the inside of the vehicle was again in the vicinity of a firearm when it was discharged or came into contact with an item that had GSR on it.
And then given the locations of the collection sites, that was done to try to look for places where potentially the areas may not have been washed.
Correct.
And when you were talking about something coming into contact with those locations, are you also thinking about the fact that if someone puts a gun in their car, it's not usually on a window?
Correct. I wouldn't test like the back seat of a vehicle knowing that someone used that vehicle to go hunting or go to a shooting range in case they put their firearm in the back of their vehicle.
So if the collection had only been, for instance, of the seats of the vehicles, that may have been less, that may have played into your conclusion some?
My first initial analysis, yes.
In this case, because you were looking at windows in this vehicle, were those stubs specifically chosen by you because they were the windows that were collected?
Yes.
I have no other questions for this witness.
All right, Cross.
Here goes the voice.
Just a few questions. Mr. Mueller, you had said that a gun may have been discharged in this vehicle. Is that your conclusion?
Yes.
Okay. And just so I understand, because I'm trying to wrap my head around that, the three particles altogether, right?
Yes.
Antimony and lead, all three make it actually GSR. Is that correct?
So there's three classifications. All three of those elements in one particle is considered a characteristic particle, which is considered a GSR particle. But there's also the 2 component and the 1 component particles that I detected are also considered GSR.
TikTok shop is great.
Right. And so in your report, you say they're also found from a number of relatively common non-firearm sources. Is that also correct?
It's possible, yes.
And what are the non-firearm sources? Could you tell me some of those?
Sure. For lead, lead used to be prominent in gasoline and paint years ago. Lead can still be used in solder or varying manufacturing facilities. The 2 component particles are less common, but they also can be found in maybe some cosmetics or fireworks. But again, those are less common.
Which
Okay.
cosmetics?
So would you find an actual GSR where all three elements were together in fireworks? Like if a firework went off in the vicinity?
No, ma'am.
You would never find GSR after fireworks?
3 component particle, no.
So you would find either consistent or commonly associated?
It's possible depending on the firework.
Okay. What about from brake dust?
Again, that's possible, yes.
What about from fertilizer?
I'm not familiar with fertilizer having those specific elements.
What about hairspray?
I'm not familiar with hairspray being a component or having those components.
Okay. So of the kits that you took, of the stubs that you had that you actually tested, how many all three particles did you find together, grouped together?
So 2, one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side on the inside windows.
So just 2?
Correct.
And so if a firearm were to be shot in the back of the Jeep, would you expect to find more than 2 from all the stubs that you analyzed?
It's difficult to determine how many particles are actually there. I'm essentially getting a sample of that area. So the number is not really pertinent to my analysis.
So is it safe to say that whoever was the person who got the stubs would be deciding what you would end up analyzing later? You wouldn't have any control over that, right?
Correct. I didn't collect the stubs.
Okay. So out of the 2 that you found, out of how many stubs did you actually analyze? I'm sorry, I missed that.
So I analyzed 3. In total, there were 8 collected.
Okay. That's all, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Just briefly.
That's all.
For the characteristic particles with all 3 elements, did you find one of those in the passenger side interior back window?
Yes.
And did you find 2 of those characteristic particles in the driver's side interior window?
Yes, I did.
You were asked about some different things like hairspray and brake dust. Are those things that would create the 3 particle characteristic
She doesn't give up.
items that we're talking about that are characteristic of GSR?
No, they were not.
So no matter how much hairspray we use in the car, you're not going to get antimony, barium, and lead stuck together into a particle?
No.
No matter how many fireworks we blow off in the back of this Jeep, we're not going to get the antimony, the barium, and the lead together as a characteristic particle?
No, ma'am.
So is this why it doesn't really matter how many you find? The fact that it's there is what's important?
Correct.
Because when you find the particles that have all 3 of those, that is what's the most meaningful of all of this.
Yes.
And that's because for the single just lead, we could come up with some reason why that might be there, right?
Correct.
And for even the consistent with, maybe you can come up with some reasons why it's there.
Correct.
But when we start talking about those characteristic particles, that means it's gunshot residue.
Correct. And the reason why I list out the other 2 classes, if you will, the consistent and commonly associated with, is because I expect to see all 3 types in the discharge of a firearm.
So when we are looking for the discharge of a firearm in a we'll call it vehicle, as we were talking about here, you wouldn't expect to only find the characteristic particles.
No, I would not.
You would expect to find the single particles, the 2 combination, and all 3 together.
That's correct.
Exactly what you found here.
Correct.
I have no other questions.
Are there any questions for this witness from any member of the jury? I'll see any, sir. You can step down.
Thank you.
State and call its next witness.
Thank you.
I think there's only one witness that would surprise me. That's it. Gonna be a very short trial. Does anybody else, when they do face masks, get impatient when one side's done and one side's not? So you just say, screw it, I'm taking the whole thing off? I do that every time.
All right, sir, come on up.
That's a good question.
You're gonna stand right here in front of my clerk, be sworn in.
Gotta remember, she believes that she didn't do anything wrong. And that they say she doesn't have anything to be sad about.